If you think it's like, oh, either cycle awareness or work, what I would say to somebody who says, okay, I don't have time for that, I would say, it's actually not another rigid set of rules. So this will, if anything, support how you show up in your work. And I truly believe burnout is often from just working against ourselves without really realizing, without kind of stopping to be like, oh, okay, what's going on inside, is in the interest of different companies and organizations and leadership. If somebody in your team is aware of how to work with their fluctuating energy, having that kept sustainable, not going to leave because I'm burnt out. There's like another layer of cycle understanding where you're like, okay, how can I show up authentically and still be present?
Welcome, love, to Wild Flow, the podcast for wild and wise women devoted to honoring your body's wisdom, reclaiming your cyclical power, and walking as a feminine leader in life, love, and through your soul work and purpose. I'm Charlotte Puanto, embodiment coach, ritual priestess, menstrual cycle educator, and feminine business mentor, here to guide soul-led women to step forward as their most magical, womb-awakened, authentic, and sovereign selves. On the podcast, we have rich and deep conversations with women I deeply admire who are leading the way in the reclamation of sacred feminine power. Ready for a new episode, my love? Let's flow. Hi, Nour. Welcome to Wild Flow podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Charlotte. I'm really excited to be here today. Doing well, feeling a freshness emerging in me. Spring in the UK
Yeah,
finally arrived.
amazing. It's so funny because our clocks haven't changed yet and they will do really soon. And it feels like it's getting dark fairly early all of a sudden. And like the leaves are dropping, it's autumn. And I was just thinking like, oh, you in the Northern Hemisphere, like spring, that sort of cusp of spring, that's such a like beautiful time. And I
Mm,
love it when I'm in it myself. And I definitely feel a little bit envious when I'm dropping into autumn and you're dropping into spring because I
mm.
just love that. Is it a time that you really love too?
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. Like you can just feel it in the air. But in the UK here, it's kind of like teasing the weather. It's like one day warm, one day cold. But I totally get how you feel on the envious side because when it's like really long winter here, I just think about the other side of the world and I'm like, that would be that'd be nice for a day. But it's always like coming back as well and enjoying the gems that you also get in the coziness of autumn and the hibernation side of winter. But yes, I do get really excited when it's spring on the cusp.
Yeah, beautiful. Enjoy it. Yeah, I'm excited for all of that, like the autumn goodness. It is true. It's just, and I do love it. But there's just something about that magic of spring that, yeah, can't go past. I would love to like hear you and invite you just, yeah, to elaborate on that kind of wisdom, but like
Mm.
how it's landing for you in terms of where you're at in your menstrual cycle, how you're feeling today, and what other seasons or cycles or uh like ways of connecting with the time of year you have. I'd just love to know where you're at today, Noor.
Yeah, so I'm on day 14. So for me, that's kind of early spring as well, which it's really beautiful actually to be in it and have the external seasons mirroring that. So when I go out, I can feel that energy bubbling up in me slowly, but then also see, the cherry blossoms start blooming, the flowers around, a bit more color on the streets, which is refreshing. Bought myself some fresh flowers as well that I'm looking at right now,
Oh, gorgeous.
just to bring a bit of, yeah, inspiration into the home. Um, and it's quite I feel quite actually relieved to be in this part of my cycle because I had quite a long cycle, long previous one. Um, and it was like the first time in a very long time that I've experienced some PMS symptoms. Um, because I've been so used to navigating those and enjoying those actually on my own. But I've recently gotten into a relationship and I kind of forgot that sometimes you're around the other person while in relationship. So there's something about, yeah, navigating like that need and want to be in my own energy, but yeah, also being around somebody else. Um, from this like empowered place as well.
Totally. I hear that so much. I live with my husband and three children, and for me it's like every time without fail, I just have this like desire to like shut the door and it's like just
Mm.
need some time and space now. Like I'm overstimulated, overwhelmed, like just need some quiet
Mm.
time. And it's like my capacity drops and I can either push on and deplete myself from a source of energy that's not actually there. It's not kind of real. It's kind of like
Mm.
running on vapors. Or I could
Yeah.
really just go, do you know what? This is actually what I really need. And yeah, I do feel like it's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? What's that shift been
Mm.
like for you? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so I guess it's finding like the right way to communicate and balancing that kind of urge to just be really direct and say what I mean and say what I feel and think, whilst also, I guess, considering how that comes across to the other person, which I'll be honest, hasn't come across in the nicest way. Um, so yeah, it's just, I guess it's, to be honest, it was really tough last cycle navigating that because for me it was almost like, oh well, I've always felt quite like empowered, but then I remembered I'm on my own, like when I kind of connected with my enchantress archetype and all of that, I quite enjoyed my premenstrual phase, and I think I still will, but it just added like a interesting new dimension. I'm always looking at it with a lens of curiosity, like, oh, that's interesting. Like I haven't experienced that intense moodiness in a long time,
Mm,
and it's come up in relationships. So yeah, I guess the answer is I'm still navigating it. I haven't found the optimal way for me just yet. And it's only the first cycle with this new exploration that I'm in.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that that's such a valuable conversation in and of itself. Because, like you say, it's
Mm.
one thing when we're by ourselves and we're in control of our environment and I guess this is going to be an interesting echo as well of the conversation we're having today, which is about cycle, like honoring our cycle in the workplace. So that sense of being around other people, being in an environment that's not entirely ours, working like around other people and their needs and timelines versus you and I both work for ourselves. And one of the reasons why I really love working for myself is that, I get to call my own shots. I get to decide if my
Mm.
timeline's going to change and I get to break all my own rules and I get to choose who I'm around and when and pick my schedule. And so, yeah, it's a sort of balance of like you can control what you can control, but then when you've got other people to really factor in as well, a lot of that can go out the window and it's a whole new renegotiation.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I'm really hearing that. And I was in 9 to 5s up until last October. So I think it hasn't even been a year for me. So I've really, experienced that being within a structure and, going in, say 3 days a week, 2 days a week from home every week. It's not really like, I didn't really feel like I could say, oh, well, actually, I would rather work from home around this time in the month and the rest of the days maybe like come in. Like there wasn't that extent of flexibility. There was some, but when it's like every week is the same, it's built on this structure of 9 to 5. You come in these 3 days each week, and that's just how it is. There are definitely challenges that come with that, and there are also like what I call loopholes where you can find ways to work with your cycle within those structures as well.
I can't wait to dive into all of this. Yeah, absolutely. I really think this is such an important conversation and one we've not had on this podcast yet as well. So before we
Mm.
do, I just wanted to quickly share as well where I'm at in my cycle because I'm day 8 today, and I
Mm.
find that my energy's rising, but I'm feeling quite tired today and a little bit slow still. But yesterday I was like super excited, like bouncing up and down, and it was like a Easter bunny kind of spring chicken, like whoop whoop whoop. And then today it's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just kind of ebbed off a little bit. And that
Mm.
it's just that reminder that it's not bolting out the gate. It's like a bit of a gentle emergence that's really required for me. And so again,
Yeah.
like going into this conversation about work is that, for me, I got to take the day off. I got to catch up with a friend. I got to like do a little bit of work here and there, but it was quite a social day, and that was really, really lovely. Whereas yesterday was
Mm.
quite a solid work day. Um,
Yeah.
and just being able to have that flexibility of choosing my own schedule, I find really, really like just incredibly beneficial for me and for my energy and my
Mm.
stage of life and my brain and all of these different things. But let's dive in. So we started talking about this a
Mm.
bit, but when you like go back to when you were in the office, what
Yeah.
were some of the biggest challenges that you found around not being able to really honor your cycle in the way that you might do now? What were the biggest challenges for
Yeah.
you?
So I think the first challenge was actually being able to listen to what my body's telling me and my energy levels. Because, after a day of work, I'm, ready to either wind down or do like, because I was building my business as well on the side, or I'm teaching yoga, or I'm doing some life admin. So it almost felt like, yes, I would give myself times to pause and be with myself maybe throughout my yoga practice, but not so much. And this is, I'm talking a few years ago, not so much, or maybe I didn't have the tools back then actually to really sit down and consider, okay, what's my body telling me? What are my energy levels saying on this day of my cycle in the way that you've just described, Charlotte, with, yesterday you were feeling that energy bubbling up, but you actually had a bit more of um, a less social day, let's say. Whereas today you felt a little bit more tired and you had more of a social day. So you have this, deep understanding of your energy levels and how it's speaking to you. And that, helps you realize that that gentle emerging is really important to you. Where I think sometimes in a 9 to 5, there's just less space to be able to connect with that. So it becomes a case of doing it little and often rather than um, having it be something that takes up a lot of time. I would say it's going to be more sustainable to do something little and often, to have like, for example, a 1 minute of intentional tracking a day of just the general vibe of that day. And I remember when I first started tracking, that's what I would do. Um, and there was just something about coming back to I loved using a paper tracker. That's what worked for me, with the circle. And I remember just really enjoying that moment of coming back and being like, okay, what was the vibe today? Like, yes, I know I might have felt more energized in the morning and tired in the evening, but what's my general, like, what would I say, like the day, what kind of dominated my day in terms of my energy and like focus and all of that. So I'd write down a couple of words, whether it's like, tired, excited, motivated. And as we know, after a few months of doing that, you start to see patterns. You start to see patterns even in the times where maybe we didn't track.
Mm,
Um, and that's been that was I would say really transformative when I was in the workplace because it provided that connection in a very gentle way, not time consuming. Literally took me a minute or two, and then over time. Um, I started to become more and more interested, and naturally it was a thing of like, oh, like I want to see what patterns there are. Like I want to check which day I'm on and what's going on. And yeah, so I would say, in answer to your question, like looping it back, I would say, yeah, that's probably one of the challenges. And then another challenge is leadership sometimes and the environment. For example, in very corporate settings, often there is a a need or from that company to be, very on all the time. Even some places in London, they actually track your usage and things like that. Your laptop, they give you a computer and they've got all sorts of tracking on there to kind of really see how much work you're doing, even if you're from home.
Mm,
Um, some workplaces are a bit more forward thinking and they understand that giving autonomy can produce better results, and more kind of, yeah, sustainable results as well. But yeah, that does exist, and a lot of people are in that mode. Um, so that's another challenge I would say. It's the people in the company, who you're working for, if there's an understanding, if it feels safe to approach a manager and say, I'm on my period today, I need to take it a bit slower. Does it feel safe to do that? Is that a normalized thing? Is it a conversation with colleagues? All of those things can impact how challenging it is to connect with cyclical living, I suppose.
mm. Yeah, I can just imagine. I didn't realize that. I mean, I obviously haven't worked in a corporate space for
Mm,
a really long time, and even when I was working, it was not a corporate space. So I feel quite surprised, but not surprised to hear that, especially with COVID and everything that's happened as people have left the office and gone to work from home, that they are tracking usage like that.
mm,
Yeah, and it feels feels so invasive. But also,
yeah.
I can see why. But it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, like there's data out there that talks about, how many hours people work and what the kind of productivity levels are. But when you've got a menstrual cycle, do you find this too, that there might be times where you work less, but there's other times where you absolutely get way more done? And it's
Mm.
not about just sitting at the desk for sitting at the desk's sake. There's so much more to it than that. And, I just, have you had any insights into how open workplaces are to understanding, how
Mm.
these different, like the different phases of the cycle work or different times where, and like just how female productivity varies?
Yeah, so I've been to a lot of networking events recently, actually, because bringing cycle awareness into the workplace is something that I'm exploring at the moment. Um, and in my previous role, for example, I worked for a tech startup that was selling a survey platform to try and support employee engagement and happiness. So it was well-being related. And I remember one of the questions I asked in my interview for that job was like, okay, if we're talking about employee, engagement and happiness, do you consider menstrual health in those surveys and things like that? And they were like, oh, well, the founder at the time, he's actually great. I was quite lucky to have quite a good founder. He said, actually, we have a menstrual wellbeing group for staff. So it's not out in the survey yet in their work with other companies, but internally they did have something to address it there because there was um, a lady who was struggling with endometriosis who kind of started this with it internally with her colleagues. And when I started working there, I also contributed, and I was so excited to see that there was a group. So it contributed to facilitating that, um, and making sure that we were also, asking the right questions around, okay, um, when are people noticing that they're more motivated to either like, organize an event or do this admin task or reach out to or do their outreach, right, to other companies to offer this platform. So people did start to notice things, and I noticed it within myself as well when I was, um, in follicular ovulation. I absolutely smashed it in terms of networking, in terms of going to our events, organizing, speaking to potential clients, to customers, all of those sorts of things. Um, and then I noticed that kind of towards the second half of my cycle, I would want to have a bit more space and would focus a bit more on admin. But I didn't always have the flexibility to do that. For example, I had to give a presentation. I think it was like a couple of days before my period. And sometimes there are certain events that I think there's like another layer of cycle understanding where you're like, okay, how can I show up authentically and still be present,
Yeah.
And so for me, that meant not necessarily needing to engage with like loads and loads of people. It meant maybe focusing on one or two people after the presentation, or just taking a couple of questions, and actually working with that rising progesterone, the more calming hormone in the body, in my body, to kind of feel like, okay, yeah, progesterone's got me. Like I'm going to give a grounded talk, really prioritize what I need to talk about. So once you learn how to work with your energy and what's coming up for you in each phase, there are ways you can still show up within your workplace structure in a way that feels, aligned for you, that feels like you're still honoring your body to some level. So in terms of this, like things like stats around our productivity levels in different times, well, there are stats to show if we feel understood in the workplace, we are going to, produce better work. We're going to, have better relationships with our colleagues and things like that. I do feel there is still some data lacking about the cycle specifically in the workplace, but well, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know of any of any other studies about cycles in the workplace. I'd love
I
to.
really don't know. Yeah, no.
Uh, yeah, so that's something I'd love to, see more of. And
Mm.
I actually know a researcher who's doing some work on this, not necessarily in the workplace, just doing like cycles and productivity and things like that.
Energy is everything, and your energy speaks volumes. Did you know that we all hold different frequencies, styles, strengths, and growth areas as leaders? When you're done with masculine, corporate, or patriarchal leadership, you might not even see yourself as a leader, but I know that you are because you're here listening to this. It's time to shake off all the ways you hold yourself back and step into what is possible for you when you awaken and embody your feminine leadership to show up authentically and lead with soul as you share your magic and medicine more fully in the world. Sometimes we just need a magic mirror to help us see ourselves more fully so we can appreciate our own strengths and skills and learn to really use them for good. Take my Sacred Feminine Leadership Archetype quiz now to learn how to tap into your authentic energy so when you show up, it feels easy, natural, and inspiring. Understand how to best attract your soul sister squad, how to tap into your natural wisdom, how to use your innate strengths, and how to work with your shadows. We need you in your full expression, leading from your feminine energy, so together we can create ripples of change around the world. Take my juicy quiz now to get your own keepsake guide at charlottepointo.com/quiz. So interesting. I really want to
Mm.
highlight what you said there about this sort of second layer of cycle awareness, as you so called it, which is okay, like we understand how we feel in each one of these phases of the cycle and like what comes naturally, what's more of a challenge, like what our like natural inclinations are. But then also when you do have to exist in a system or a structure or an environment where it's like, no, we're not like just gonna bow out for however much time. Which, is obviously the challenge and the tension, but how can you show up authentically while still honoring yourself? I think that's
Mm,
so powerful, and it just like applies so clearly here where your job is dependent on your productivity and your participation. And
mm,
I think when some women feel like, oh, no, cycle awareness is not for me because I have to go to work. Like I just can't do it. And it sort of
mm,
does this black and white exercise where, you do this at this time and you do that at that time. And then you take time off at this time. And that's just not realistic for so many people. So this
mm,
piece there of, okay, well, I need to do this thing. So how can I do it in a way that still feels good to me is like, it's such a powerful bridge. It's such a necessary
mm,
practice and real understanding. And I really loved there what you said. Like, I really heard that example, particularly the one where you said about, giving a presentation and then just taking a couple of questions or just talking to a couple of people at a networking event rather than
mm,
going around the entire room. And I just think, yeah, there's got to be so many ways, so many examples of how we can still do what we need to do whilst like
mm,
maybe buffering ourselves or um sort of minimizing how much or the ways that we're doing it. And just rather than
yeah.
having this sort of like I'm going at 100 miles an hour all the time
Mm,
while I'm at work. Yeah. Um,
yeah, for
like,
sure, for sure. And
yeah.
yeah, and I think there's also this thing of like, if you think it's like, oh, either cycle awareness or work, it's what I would say to somebody who says, okay, I don't have time for that. I would say, it's actually not another rigid set of rules. So this will, if anything, support how you show up in your work and in the time that you do have. Um, and yeah, it can literally be as little as 1 minute a day to begin something like, cycle awareness. And there's also, I remember, before I had too much cycle awareness, if I felt a little bit inwards and I didn't really necessarily know why at the time, apart from maybe like, okay, my period's here, or, that would kind of be my end of explanation for it.
Mm,
And often, I'd feel that urge to pull in and want to be a bit more quiet. And sometimes it would be met with like this internal chatter of like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I not like getting too involved or like connecting too much? And then the following week it would feel really natural for me to get involved. And I think like going from that, when I was being quiet, but, feeling a bit anxious about it to now, or more recently, when I've been in the office, for example, physically, and then say I'm on my period, there's a lot of power in having confidence in your quiet, in your pulling back and being internal. So, rather than, kind of keep myself to myself and feel anxious about it and try and push myself to still, be with everyone, that FOMO, fear of missing out, might kick in, right? If you're in those
mm,
kinds of spaces. When I shifted that to like, well, I know what's going on in my body, like complete honoring of that, and just having confidence in that quiet. Because there's a real difference when you go somewhere and, you say you're sitting in the corner getting on with your work and kind of not getting involved and feeling stressed out about it versus, you know, walking in, sitting down, getting on with your work, putting your headphones on, even if your colleagues are in the room. And if that's what you need, right? Because not everybody necessarily needs or wants to do that. But for me, I know that's something that really supported me in the workplace, and just and then later when I felt safer too, and I started bringing up menstrual cycle awareness to my colleagues, I would start to say, I'm on my period, so I'm just going to pop my headphones on and get on with my work. Um, just in that way. And at the beginning, it felt difficult to say that. And afterwards, it started becoming a bit more normal. Other colleagues started sharing, about their PMS, for example, or be like, oh, I'm craving so much sugar or whatever it is. And it just became a bit more normalized. And I think there's another step after that where we don't want it to stop there. We don't want it to stop at like, um, just like, oh, I'm feeling crap. So, so I'm not going to speak to anyone. We want it to take it a step further of like, okay, I know this about my body. How can I work with it?
Love, love, love.
So,
Yeah, I love this. And I really love, I was going to ask you, I was curious, if you had those conversations with colleagues and how that was received, whether there was a curiosity
mm,
or and an openness or like a complete kind of shutdown withdrawal. But love really hearing that, as you pave the way and you start having these conversations and, in your own time when you felt comfortable to, that actually there was real curiosity and openness and that real sort of sisterhood in like, yeah, I'm feeling like this is where I'm at. But even then
mm,
moving beyond that of like, okay, so this is how I'm feeling. And it's like, well, what can we do, do about that, do to support that and to do that
mm,
in a way that doesn't feel like you're kind of like the I was gonna say weird one, but obviously I don't think it's weird. But from somebody else's point
yeah.
of view, like, oh, the one who's always banging on about her period, or because it can be seen as we know, like, we're complaining and being too sensitive. That was something
Mm,
I always felt and got told at work as well. I was too sensitive. Um, you
mm,
know, like we've got these challenges and we're letting it devalue us or we're, letting it becomes like a way out. And I just think
mm,
like, the way that the world is right now is, sort of think of it as like, back in the back in the day, women could never admit any of this. It would have been like dangerous. You'd have lost your job. You'd have been called like a dirty feminist, bra
mm,
burning, and you would have been, I would have been, really quite stigmatized thing to have said. There would have been
yeah.
ramifications for sure. And women have had to play men at men's rules. But now we're in this place
Hmm.
where it's like we know we don't want to play it by their rules. We actually want to play by our rules. And that's actually becoming really possible to do. It's like we don't
Mm,
actually have to override. And I think that these conversations are just so worth having. And not only is it worth having, it's really the right time now. We know that the world's moved on so much and that in the UK, you've got workplace policies that exist. It does feel like now is the time for these conversations to be had and for this work to be done. So I'd love to hear a bit about what you're offering in terms of workplace support around menstrual cycle wisdom and how you're finding that these places are willing and how, like, if anyone's listening who's working in a workplace, particularly a corporate workplace, and they are in charge of a team or work in HR even, or any kind of way that we can be considering how to bring more cycle wisdom and just support and just making it like an environment where it's not so stigmatized. We don't have to like, suffer in silence. How's it going for you? And I'd love to just hear, yeah, what are the some of the things that you're really trying to introduce into these workplaces?
yeah, sure. I think the first thing that I'm really trying to bring in is cycle awareness. I feel like that's where it all begins. Um, so whether that's well, one of the things I'm offering is coming in to deliver a talk to people who menstruate or may not be menstruating right now. People with vulvas, essentially, still trying to work out the terminology for that in corporate spaces. Um, but yeah, the first thing is cycle awareness is learning the basics, the different phases, how to track your own cycle. Because I think that understanding of yourself needs to come first and foremost before it's a general thing in the workplace where it's like, oh, we want to start with like, how does this apply to me? And then offer, you know, offer understanding outwards as well. Because if the individual really understands it, then they're going to be more inclined to um, to share with another individual who they know understands it. So something like, yes, like a talk. I kind of offer three talks. One of them is for people with vulvas themselves. The second one is for staff in general, including male staff. And interestingly, in some of the networking events I've gone to recently, in speaking to some men about cycle awareness, a lot of them have been like, "Oh, that's something I'd like to learn more about because my daughter's coming up to that age," or like, got some of them are dads, some of them are partners, and some of them just are actually genuinely quite interested. Not all of them. Some people I've spoken to, some men are just kind of like, "Oh, okay, interesting," kind of nods, and then that's it. And you do get that a lot as well. But I'm trying to, with those men that are really like, okay, I actually do want to learn more about this. I'm trying to encourage as much of that as possible and try and bring that in. So yeah, the first thing. And then the third one is for leadership, because there's that thing of like, if all the staff now feel comfortable in sharing, but leadership don't, and they feel awkward, then it creates this kind of, I guess, mismatch or lack of alignment in the company culture, which can create all sorts of issues if not addressed. But if it is addressed and leadership do have that understanding, then, when people do feel safe to come and say, like, I'm on my period, or like, oh, I think I'm ovulating, like, I'm really up for this or that, and it's not a weird thing, like, imagine how much that could actually benefit a company because the person is willing themselves to use some of their strengths that they know they have and they're confident that they have, um, and applying that willingly to the work they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you, like you said, like, oh, hey, I'm ovulating, I'm mid-cycle, I've got this big energy burst, I've got extra capacity, I can step in and support where work needs doing, or I can put some of that energy into, a side project, or I can step in to run this event or the meeting or whatever it is, sales, marketing,
Mm,
networking, like, the uses of that ovulation power are really endless. And so being able to say, like, I've got the capacity right now, with the understanding that that doesn't mean this is forever and
mm,
it's like I'm giving you the green flag to take advantage. It's like, there's a window of time and opportunity, and here's how we can really harness that. Like, isn't that amazing?
mm,
With the proviso that, like, when we do need, maybe, like you said, to work a little bit from home, or I used to go in and put my headphones on as well and just like head down, like, when I was premenstrual or like particularly bleeding. And this was before I had cycle awareness, really, but I just knew, I was
mm,
like, I can't deal with all the office chit chat. I don't want to get stuck in, like, you know, gossip. I don't want to get pulled into like having to volunteer for all these extra jobs. I've just got this project.
mm,
I need to focus on it. Like, I don't need to talk to anyone. Like, I just put my headphones and I used to listen to like classic FM because it was so soothing
mm.
and just like
Yeah.
chill. And like, there were no lyrics. It wasn't distracting. And I was like, who's this old person? But it was beautiful. It
Mm,
was just so like exactly what I needed at the time. And I look back and I'm like, that's cycle awareness before I even knew what it was. Like, if we could communicate
for
all of that,
sure.
it just feels like a whole, from a business point of view, like an untapped energy source, or, a power.
Mm,
And from our point of view, it's like how beautiful to not feel like you've got to just, I always used to feel like I had to switch off my humanity, my womanhood when I would go into work,
mm.
because,
Yeah.
I wasn't a mother at the time, but it's hard for women who are to have all those responsibilities. It's hard when you have a hormonal rhythm, and it must be hard for women in menopause, and there's more menopause policies
Mm,
coming in too. But just so much, women, like you said, with endometriosis, there's such a spectrum of experience that we could really be supporting without, losing productivity for I'm sure, that's from a business point of view of what the fear
Mm,
might be if they're opening up. Or if we open this up, people are going to take advantage. It's like, no, like, you know, women are really hardworking and they don't make excuses and they don't need to be held accountable.
mm,
Like we step in, we get it done. But when we do need that support, like we should really be able to ask for it. So this is
mm.
just like so important. And I love that you're really focusing on this and as well as your yoga, for corporates as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, so many different potential situations that, someone might be in the workplace, like the ones you just mentioned. And I think it's been like a real history of not listening to the experiences of female-bodied people and really hearing, what is going on that sometimes might create that kind of reluctance to like share everything or that fear that, oh, someone might take advantage. Um, but the reality is, more often than not, people, like you said, people won't take advantage. They will just learn more about their bodies. They will learn more about their rhythms, and it's going to prevent things like burnout because, something I've experienced, something a lot of people have experienced, and I truly believe burnout is often from just working against ourselves without really realizing, like trying to do the same thing every single day and run at 100 miles per hour without kind of stopping to be like, oh, okay, what's going on inside? Like what's going on internally? Um, and what you said as well about the energy level, the managing the energy, I think that's also something that is in the interest of different companies and organizations and leadership because if somebody in your team is aware of how to work with their fluctuating energy, just as we've been saying, they're going to be more up for stepping in for others or up for, saying, I'm going to do this admin bit or, whatever it is. It's largely about managing energy levels and, having that kept sustainable, um, not like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna work like intensely for a year and then I'm gonna leave because I'm burnt out. Or you get the other issue of presenteeism where somebody is still at work, but they're not fully engaged, they're not fully there because perhaps there's some things they don't feel they can bring their authentic selves to work. And it's not to say like, oh, the way you're with your family needs to be the way you're with your colleagues. No, but it's saying how can you still honor yourself in both situations and
Mm,
have that kind of consistency from within. Yeah, of course we show up differently with different people, but we still have that kind of base that we can come back to and tune into.
mm. I love that. I think that's a really helpful pointer of like reflection for like how are you showing up? Are you really able to be, like you say, not even necessarily your true self, like your professional self, but still like connected to yourself, or do you feel like you have to become like a whole different person and
Mm,
to just simply get through the day? And enough women are losing out because of on income and superannuation or pension, depending on where you live, what it's called. Um,
mm,
all of this just through needing to step out of the workforce because of health issues and menopause and um yeah, health conditions and all the rest. And it's like, if companies want to increase their staff retention as well, I'm sure like this is such a powerful way of being able to really honor all of that. So amazing.
yeah.
So
Mm,
if you're speaking to somebody who's like listening, who's like really curious, or like on one hand able to listen to their body and cycle, but sort of has been feeling challenged about how to take that into the workplace, what would be like a couple of tips that you might share with them to encourage that to grow?
yeah. So I can offer four main things that come to mind. And the first one is creating allies, like finding, even if it's just one other person, one other colleague, um, where you feel you can share a little bit with. And if you don't have that, maybe for some time, it's about being your own colleague or taking the brave and bold and uncomfortable approach of seeing how it feels to share something, just even something as small as feeling quite tired. I think it's related to my cycle with maybe HR, with somebody in the workplace. So you will know whether it's safe to do that in your workplace. And I do understand the challenges where in some, corporate companies, it's really, it can feel really challenging to actually even approach that conversation where it's so taboo. In those kinds of places, I would ask a wider question of, you know, how is it that you envision, like, your ideal work life? And that kind of goes into another topic. But I know for me, I couldn't work for a place that doesn't allow any sort of mention of that or, is weird about that. But yeah, where possible, most generally in most situations, people have at least one person they feel comfortable in sharing about their cycle with, and the cycle awareness that you learn for yourself, just bringing it to this one, two colleagues, those allies in the company. And if it feels comfortable to speak about it more, just general cycle awareness, asking people like, oh, have you thought about that? Oh, I found this interesting, or I noticed this about myself. Is there something you've noticed? I remember having a colleague who was in perimenopause, and I mean, she was quite outspoken, and she'd be like, oh, I think I'm getting a hot flush again. We managed to actually get fans in the workplace, and I also asked for hot water bottles in the office.
I love that.
So yeah, and I always felt a bit like when I got the hot water bottle out, I was like, everyone knows. Um,
But also, were you a little bit smug of like, yes, I've got my water bottle. Like, that's so nice.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, I was lucky in very last workplace I had, the 9 to 5, that I could do that. Um, the one before wasn't as open, so I used to be service manager of a mental health service, and it's interesting, and because mental health is also so linked to menstrual health, right? But there was a lot more taboo around it, and I felt it wasn't as well received. But also, maybe I wasn't in that super, like confident space of like, I'm ready, I'm here to talk about it, I want to bring it in. Whereas in this the previous role I was in, I was a lot more like kind of unapologetic about it, I would say.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's the first thing, allies. The second thing is creating moments for yourself. So if you're in one of those quite strict, rigid workplaces, it's, if you're on your period, how can you, when you come home, have set aside, just 5 minutes for yourself, you know, just to close your eyes, check in, hand on the heart, hand on the lower belly, the womb space, and just, take those breathers and really intentionally create that and consider what does that pause, look like for you, because it doesn't actually need to be sitting down for like an hour and looking at yourself. It really doesn't. It can be so small and incremental over a period of time. So that's another thing. And again, it's managing how safe it feels in your workplace. But if it does feel safe, it's yeah, working on that. And that leads me to my third point, which I mentioned earlier, is that confidence in quiet. How can you either share that maybe you're bleeding, or maybe you're even if you're not bleeding and you're actually just feeling like your energy is turning inwards, maybe actually you find your energy turns inwards in your ovulation, and you want to spend that energy on creative projects, or whatever it is for your workplace. Maybe it's something visual, maybe you're in, I don't know, web design, and you want to focus on that, maybe you're in marketing, whatever it is. um so it's understanding what it is for you and showing up confidently in that space, is the other tip I would give. And then the last one I would say is speaking to HR or somebody in leadership, or a manager that you think, at the very least, wouldn't fire you for your job. for sharing that you'd like to bring in some more cycle awareness into the workplace, having somebody like a menstrual health educator or a cycle coach, like myself, like what I'm offering at the moment in workplaces, come in, do, an hour and a half talk, either for um, people who may or may not be menstruating at the moment themselves, for leadership, or for all staff, suggesting something like that, or even some resources online that they can start sharing with their employees.
Amazing. They're four
Yeah.
really, really awesome tips. Thank you so much. I love those. And things that I, yeah, wouldn't necessarily have thought of at all. So really value your perspective and your experience and insights. And gosh, I just wish that, workplaces would really take this on and kind of let down their sort of tight holding on how things need to be and the kind of,
Mm,
what it means to have a productive culture and just really embrace, for 51% of the population, who are going to be, um, you know, in their workforce or menstruating or just suffering in some ways that, that we're holding on to and keeping quiet. Just to allow, like you say, that space of compassion and understanding before you even get into like the superpowers of this is like such an untapped potential. So yeah,
mm.
fantastic work. And I, yeah, love the sound of your offers and, really like wish you all the best with this. And I just hope more and more places take this on. So
Yes, yeah. It's not only needed, I truly believe it is possible and it's already happening. Like we've got, with more and more, you hear like femtech or like women in leadership or like female in businesses or just even more and more like female body people in leadership roles in their workplace. Like it's no surprise that that's kind of correlated with all this, at least in England, wellbeing policies coming into place. Um, that's interestingly happened around the same time. Well-being's become more important as more and more, um, as we see more and more women in places of leadership. So I find that interesting, and it gives me hope and keeps me going. And some days you'll speak to people and you'll be like, "Oh, we're so far behind," and other days you'll hear like, "This company's putting this in place. This company is, putting a hot water bottle in their office and a fan." And so I would say it's also just believing that we don't we don't only need it, but that it's possible and it's already happening in some places, that it's coming. And I feel truly that companies who aren't really keeping up with this shift are just going to end up falling behind and yeah, losing people to burnout or um to presenteeism, not really being present in their work, or absenteeism, not showing up because it doesn't feel safe to express what's going on for them. So yeah, it's happening. We're on the right track, and I hope that this has been helpful for anybody who is in one of these kind of structured 9 to 5s, or even in, even if you've got your own business in when you've got a team and you're working with different people and that communication as well.
yeah, such good points there. Love that so much. And like you said yourself, you wouldn't work somewhere that wasn't open to these conversations. And I really feel like this is absolutely where we're heading, and quite rightly so. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, Noor. Really loved chatting to you. So where can people find you and connect with you and find out about your offers, if they want to come and see what you're up to?
Yeah. So my Instagram is cyclical essence. And if you're interested in the work offerings that I share, you can find me on LinkedIn, Nour Kayali, that's my full name. And also, I have a freebie on unlocking consistency with your menstrual cycle, which can be very applicable to the workplace when we think about consistency. At the moment, I mean, the initial thought that I have when I think of consistency is doing the same thing every day. And so that toolkit is really about challenging that from within, and working with consistency in a cyclical way across the different cycles. I also just want to say thank you so much to you, Charlotte, for inspiring so much of this. And so much of these conversations that we've had through coaching, through my business coaching sessions with you, have helped me shape some of these offerings and connect with the importance of this work again. So just wanted to say thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's just been so exciting to watch your offers develop, and your passion is so strong and clear with this experience that you've had. And just to see you really claiming this, stepping in and offering it, like you said, unapologetically, is so inspiring for me, because I do feel like these workplaces are like the next frontier. It's so much easier when you're doing it for yourself, by yourself, and it's like there's nobody else challenging that. But when you're going into these places every day, and it's like you say, it's an established culture and system, this is really, it's big work. So really bow to you for what you were doing when you were there, but now going in and having these conversations and being that challenger. It's really awesome. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Loved speaking with you on this topic, and thank you for bringing this to people's awareness as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pop all the links in the show notes, so anyone who wants to, and I highly encourage you to go and find Nour's work. That would be you've got the places to go and do that. So thank you so much, my love. And yeah, I'm sure this was inspiring for everyone listening.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for listening, my love. To reclaim your wild feminine power, magic, and flow is an act of sacred rebellion, and it's needed now more than ever. Share this episode with a sister, share on socials, leave a review, and support this podcast and movement to grow and deepen around the world. To discover, activate, and embody your sacred feminine leadership archetype, take the quiz now at charlottequanto.com/quiz to find if you're a mystic, muse, connector, or challenger, to become the feminine leader you're born to be. And until next time, my love, be devoted to your body as guide, your cycle as oracle, and your sisterhood as allies.